Have you ever found something in your house that was better left alone? I did, and I wish I never touched it. When I inherited my grandmother's house, I thought it would be a fresh start. It was a beautiful old Victorian home, full of history and memories. My family had lived there for generations, and I was excited to make it my own. But there was one part of the house that I hadn't explored, the attic. My grandmother never spoke about it, and to be honest, I didn't really want to go up there. Something about it just felt off. One rainy afternoon, I decided to finally tackle the attic. It was dusty, filled with old boxes, forgotten furniture, and the lingering scent of mildew. As I rummaged through the clutter, something caught my eye. Hidden behind a stack of boxes was an old porcelain doll. She had wide blue eyes, a delicate lace dress, and long, tangled blonde hair. She was beautiful in a strange, eerie way, but there was something unsettling about her. I picked her up, feeling a strange chill as I did. Her eyes seemed too lifelike, almost as if they were following me. The room suddenly felt colder, but I shrugged it off. It was an attic, after all, drafty and damp. Still, I couldn't shake the uneasy feeling. I decided to take the doll downstairs, thinking she would make an interesting piece of decor for my new home. That night, as I lay in bed, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. I turned over and saw the doll, sitting on the shelf where I had placed her earlier. Her wide blue eyes were locked onto me, unblinking. I told myself it was just my imagination. Dolls are meant to look lifelike, after all. But the longer I stared at her, the more unsettled I felt. I tried to sleep, but every time I closed my eyes, I could feel her gaze on me. It was like a weight pressing down on my chest, making it hard to breathe. I tossed and turned for hours, until finally, in the dead of night, I heard it. A faint giggle. It was so soft, so childlike, that I thought I must have imagined it. But when I opened my eyes, the doll's head was tilted slightly, as if she was watching me even more intently than before. Over the next few days, strange things started happening. I would find objects in places I hadn't left them. My keys, my phone, even the books on my shelf. Everything seemed to be moved just slightly out of place. At first, I thought I was just being forgetful, but then the occurrences became more disturbing. I would wake up in the middle of the night to find the doll sitting in different positions. Sometimes she would be closer to the bed. Other times she would be facing the window, as if watching something outside. One night I woke to the sound of scratching. It was faint at first, but it grew louder, more frantic. It was coming from the shelf where the doll sat. My heart raced as I turned on the light, and there she was, her tiny hands pressed against the glass of the shelf, as if she had been trying to claw her way out. I froze, staring at her in disbelief. I hadn't touched her. I knew I hadn't. That was when I decided to put the doll away. I couldn't stand to look at her anymore. I placed her in an old wooden box, sealed it shut, and shoved it back into the attic where I had found her. For a while, things seemed to calm down. The strange occurrences stopped, and I finally started to feel at ease in the house again. But it didn't last. A few weeks later, I was sitting in the living room, watching TV, when I heard it again. That faint giggle. My blood ran cold. I tried to ignore it, but the sound grew louder, more persistent. I got up, hesitantly making my way to the attic. As I opened the door, a gust of cold air rushed past me, sending a shiver down my spine. The box where I had placed the doll was wide open. The doll was gone. Panic set in as I searched the attic frantically. Finally, I found her, sitting in the corner, facing the wall. Her head was tilted at an odd angle, and her once beautiful porcelain face was now cracked. I grabbed her and ran downstairs, determined to get rid of her once and for all. I threw her into the fireplace and lit a match. As the flames engulfed her, I heard it again, that same high-pitched, childlike giggle. It echoed through the room, louder than ever, as if the doll was mocking me. I watched in horror as the fire burned out, but the doll remained intact, her cracked face staring up at me from the ashes. To this day, I don't know what she was or why she came into my life, but sometimes, late at night, I hear that giggle, and I know she's still here, waiting. It started as a harmless joke, but what I didn't know was that this doll had a mind of its own. My girlfriend, Emily, and I loved to play pranks on each other. It was something we had done since we started dating. So, when I found this old, creepy doll at a yard sale, I thought it would be the perfect way to freak her out. The doll was small, with a cracked porcelain face, and glass eyes that seemed too lifelike for comfort. It was the kind of thing you'd expect to see in a horror movie. I bought it for a few dollars, laughing to myself as I imagined how much it would freak Emily out. That night, after she went to bed, I placed the doll on her pillow, right next to her head. When she woke up in the morning and saw it, she screamed, jumping out of bed in a panic. I couldn't stop laughing. It was just a harmless prank. At least, that's what I thought. The next day, I put the doll in the kitchen, sitting on the counter facing the door, so it would be the first thing Emily saw when she came home from work. She wasn't happy about it. "That thing is creepy," she said, shoving it into a drawer. "Stop putting it everywhere." But I wasn't done with my prank. Later that night, after Emily had gone to sleep, I placed the doll on the bathroom sink, its blank, expressionless face staring directly into the mirror. I went to bed, satisfied that I had freaked her out again. But when I woke up in the middle of the night, something felt wrong. The house was silent except for a soft creaking sound. It was faint, almost imperceptible, but it was coming from the closet. I sat up, my heart racing, and stared at the door. It was slightly open. I hadn't touched it, and I was certain Emily hadn't either. Slowly, I got out of bed and walked over to the closet, my hand trembling as I pushed the door open. There, sitting in the corner of the closet, was the doll. I stared at it, my mind racing. I had left it in the bathroom. How had it gotten here? I picked it up, feeling a chill run down my spine, and put it back in the bathroom. I was starting to feel uneasy, but I convinced myself it was just part of the prank. Emily must have moved it, right? The next morning, I asked Emily if she had moved the doll. She looked at me, confused. "I haven't touched that thing since yesterday," she said. My stomach dropped. If she hadn't moved it, then who, or what, had? That night, I locked the doll in the closet. I made sure the door was shut tight before going to bed. But around 3 a.m., I woke up to the sound of footsteps. Soft, shuffling footsteps, like someone was walking slowly down the hallway. I sat up, my heart pounding, and looked at the bedroom door. It was closed, but the footsteps were getting closer. I nudged Emily awake, and we both listened, frozen in fear. The footsteps stopped right outside the door. I held my breath, waiting for something to happen, but after a few moments, everything went silent. Emily and I looked at each other, unsure of what to do. Slowly, I got out of bed and opened the door. The doll was sitting in the hallway, facing our bedroom. At this point, we were both terrified. We couldn't explain what was happening, and the doll seemed to be moving on its own. We decided to get rid of it once and for all. I took the doll outside, poured lighter fluid over it, and set it on fire. But as the flames engulfed the doll, I heard something that made my blood run cold. A scream. A high-pitched, agonized scream, like a child in pain. The fire burned out, but when I looked down, the doll was still there, charred but intact. We left the house that night and never went back. But sometimes, when I'm alone, I hear those same footsteps. And I know she's still out there, waiting to find me again. I've always loved collecting antiques, but there's one doll in my collection that I wish I had never found. I've been an antique collector for years, traveling all over the country in search of unique and rare items. There's something fascinating about owning a piece of history, something that's been touched by lives from long ago. So, when I found myself in New Orleans, I knew I would find something special, but I never expected to find her. I stumbled upon a small, dusty shop tucked away in a corner of the French Quarter. The moment I stepped inside, I knew this place was different. It was filled with strange, old trinkets, odd paintings, and eerie statues. But in the back of the shop, sitting on a shelf, was the most hauntingly beautiful doll I had ever seen. She was made of porcelain, with a finely crafted lace dress and deep, glassy eyes that seemed too real. There was something almost hypnotic about her. The shopkeeper noticed me staring at the doll and approached cautiously. He told me that the doll had a dark history, that it had once belonged to a little girl who died tragically. He warned me that strange things had happened to anyone who had owned the doll. But I didn't believe in that kind of thing. I bought the doll and brought her home, placing her in my collection of antiques. That night I had the first of many nightmares. In the dream, I was in a dark room, and there was a little girl standing in the corner. She was crying, begging for help. "I'm trapped," she whispered over and over again. I woke up in a cold sweat, shaken by how real the dream had felt. The next day, I noticed something strange. The doll's expression seemed different. Her once neutral face now looked sad, almost as if she was mirroring the emotions of the girl in my dream. I tried to ignore it, but the dreams continued. Every night the little girl appeared, crying, begging for help. Each time the doll's face seemed to change, becoming more sorrowful, more desperate. Then the voices started. At first it was just a whisper, a soft, unintelligible murmur that I couldn't quite make out. But soon I could hear it clearly. It was the girl's voice, the same one from my dreams. "Help me," she would whisper. "I'm trapped." One night I woke up to find the doll sitting on the floor at the foot of my bed. I hadn't moved her, and I knew no one else had either. My heart raced as I stared at her, trying to make sense of what was happening. I reached out to pick her up, but the moment I touched her, the room went cold. I could see my breath in the air, and the weight of the room felt like it was pressing down on me. The girl's voice echoed in my head, louder now. "Help me," she screamed. I couldn't move. I couldn't speak. The doll's glassy eyes flickered for just a second, and I knew there was something trapped inside her, something dark and angry. I couldn't keep her anymore. I grabbed the doll and drove to the nearest river, throwing her into the water, hoping it would be enough to break whatever curse she held. I watched as she sank beneath the surface, feeling a strange sense of relief wash over me. It was over, or so I thought. When I returned home, the doll was sitting on my front porch. Her dress was soaked, and her face, once sorrowful, was now twisted into a sinister grin. The girl no longer cries in my dreams. Now she laughs, and every night I hear her voice growing louder and closer. I don't think I can escape her,